Hello everyone, Jason from the Game Bowl here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the reveal trailer for Ni No Kuni 2 and discussing a few things that you may have missed. I was actually at PSX this year and I was screaming at the top of my lungs when they announced this, and I was so excited that I missed a lot of it. So after getting back to my hotel room, I immediately watched this trailer about 100 times over, and I realized in this little 2.5 minute trailer, there's a lot more than meets the eye. So let's unravel it, shall we? So first things first, we meet some new protagonists right off the bat. Evan Pettywhisker Tildrum, King of Ding Dong Dell, and Roland, a visitor from another world, as it explains soon after. But I want to stop it right here, because this is already a lot of info in the first few seconds, and they've already made some connections to the first game that I'd like to point out. Firstly, Evan says he is King of Ding Dong Dell, which is the first town you travel to in Ni No Kuni, but even more interesting is his name. His last name, Tildrum, is also the last name of King Tom, aka Your Majesty, who was King of Ding Dong Dell in the first Ni No Kuni. It would make sense that they are related, not just because of their last name, but also because of their appearance. King Tom was a cat, and the villagers that made up the town at the time were cats and humans, which mingled together. King Evan just so happens to have cat ears as well as a cat tail, so I think it's safe to say that they were related one way or another. Moving a tad bit forward, we see our first glimpse of Roland, who seems a bit confused about where he is. What's interesting here is that I presume we play as King Evan, and instead of traveling to Ni No Kuni like Oliver did, we actually start there, which makes me wonder if traveling between worlds will still be a key feature, and if we will ever travel to Roland's world at any point in the game. So then we see a mouse who is leading an army of mice guards, presumably taking over Ding Dong Dell. Roland even tells the king that they are coming for him and that they need to leave. He also calls it a coup, furthering evidence that this is some sort of takeover. I can't help but wonder if the leader of these mice is a descendant of King Hickory Dock, who resided in Ding Dong Well and was the king of the mice and arch nemesis of King Tom. During the takeover scene, we also see another new character who protects King Evan from the mice soldiers, but we never get her name. We see a scene shortly after that, which takes place in Ding Dong Well, which you can tell by looking at the signature fish markings and fountains on the side of the wall. The lady that protected King Evan is clearly wounded and presumably passing away, sort of like how Oliver's mom passes away at the beginning of the first Ni No Kuni, except unlike the first game, I don't think this is Evan's mother. Not only because of the non-resemblance, but something else that I'll get to a little bit later in the trailer. So then we get a small scene where Roland says he made a decision to stay in Ni No Kuni with King Evan. It looks like they are hanging out in a cave next to a campfire, nothing too significant though. Right after that, we see another new character, which appears to be another companion of Evan's. Both of them are riding on what looks like a sky pirate plane alongside the sky pirates, who played a big role in the first game. This also appears to be a new area, as I can't really recall any areas that look like this in the first game, at least not with this many waterfalls or interesting looking birds, which could be new familiars as well. Also, there's one more thing that I'd like to look at in this area, which happens right at the start of this scene. You can see a giant purple dragon, which looks a lot like Tengri from the first game, fly by in the blink of an eye. But as I slowed it down and paused it, I realized this isn't Tengri we were looking at, as this dragon is missing Tengri's signature ram horns on his head, as well as his collar. One thing that I think is really interesting is that you can see the sky pirates waving in the direction of the dragon as it flies by, as if someone is on its back. So I wondered if Oliver could possibly be riding him, but it seems like the back of the dragon is purposely cut off, so that you can't see. And by the time you do see it again, it's so far ahead of the rest of the group, it's hard to tell if someone's riding it or not. Whoever the sky pirates are waving at, Level 5 is clearly trying to keep a secret, at least in my opinion. I should also point out that I have no idea if Oliver will be returning or not, but if he does, I imagine he would now be one of the 4 great sages, as there's obviously a void that needed to be filled after the events of the last game. Although, this game could take place quite a few years later, and Oliver could be long gone. Up next, we see a close-up of the sky pirates as they bow down to King Evan, and the leader says, "We serve you now." The leader of these pirates looks a lot like an older Kublai, who was the king of the sky pirates in the last game. This new leader could also be a relative. As the camera changes, we can see a tad bit more of the surrounding area, and I'm thinking this is either Skull Mountain because of the painted logs sticking out of the rocks, which is where the Sky Pirates resided in the last game, or it's an entirely new area. We also see a glimpse of our new companion from the last scene, who seems to be dressed in similar clothes and colors as the rest of the village surrounding her, and she's also wearing a tooth necklace, meaning she's probably from the same colony as these villagers. As the crowd is cheering and Rollins says this is where it all begins, we see a familiar which resembles King Evan, meaning this is probably Evan's first familiar, and it was presumably formed by the spell Form Familiar, much like how Mighty was formed by Oliver. Not long after this, we see another new town with a giant guardian wreaking havoc. As we hear the girl companions say, the guardians are meant to protect things, not destroy them. Roland mentions that he thinks it's not destroying things by choice, as you see the eye of the guardian change, which takes us to presumably our new antagonist, who appears to be controlling the guardians with some sort of dark magic. His castle also looks very similar to Shadar's castle from the original game. Then we see a world consumed by darkness, as King Evan slowly trenches towards a dark figure, as he says he will never give up. This area looks very similar to the starting path of Mount Smoky from the first game. If you look closely, you can even see what looks like glowing lava cracks on the rocky wall in the background. So then we get a nice little emotional ending scene where King Evan says, "I promised her, I will build a kingdom where everyone can live happily ever after," as he walks out to address the kingdom of what looks like a new area of Ding Dong Dell, which I can only assume because of the blue flags in the background with the fish on them. Also, earlier I mentioned I didn't think the lady who passed away was King Evan's mom, and I say this because of how Evan refers to the lady as her, where Oliver always referred to his mom as Mom in the first game, which is a stark difference. The camera then pans up, and we once again see the Tengri looking dragon fly by very quickly, followed by the Sky Pirates. I once again slowed down the footage and zoomed in on the dragon's back, which you can see much clearer this time, and it appears that no one is riding him, but his tail and back are arched in a way where they could still be hiding someone. And then the trailer comes to a close, as we get the title, Ni No Kuni 2, Revenant Kingdom. Just as a final side note, it looks like the story director and character designer will be back on board alongside the composer, Joe Hahashi, who scored the original beautiful soundtrack, which I must have played 1,000 times by now in iTunes. Anyway, it's been fun, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys found this video very tidy! See you next time, guys!